Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
Question to the audience: what happens to your family, your business, or your estate if you don't have a plan in place? That's exactly what Redmond will be talking about. How the right legal steps today can protect your family, your assets, and your peace of mind. If you're a business owner, parent, or simply someone who cares about leaving a clear legacy, tune in how Redmond helps people navigate family law, wills, and estate planning before life forces your hand. Our guest today is Redmond O'Brien from Odette Regama Lawyers PC. So, Redmond works at Odette Regama Lawyers PC as a bilingual legal professional, practicing both in English and French, with a focus on family law, wills, and estates. Called to the Ontario Bar in 2015, Redmond brings experience from working on child and family services for Indigenous communities with Justice Canada, handling privacy law, public health strategy at the federal level, and practicing civil litigation and estate law in Ottawa. Today, he offers legal advice, strategic guidance, document drafting, and courtroom representation, along with coaching to help clients navigate complex legal matters. Outside the courtroom, Redmond enjoys family time, sports, music, travel, and volunteering, especially when it comes to supporting youth. He's also an active member of the Phoenix Business Exchange, connecting with Ottawa's vibrant business community. Redmond, it was a pleasure to have you here today, sir. Welcome.
Here.
Welcome, sir. G'day. How are you doing? What is your favorite quote or saying?
My favorite quote is, "In this life, we cannot do great things, only small things with great love." I think it's a nice quote.
That's really nice. What's your business tagline for your firm?
Protecting your rights are a priority.
A lot of people make assumptions because they watch TV, they see lawyers, everything from criminal to other matters, or even the movies. What's the common mistake that most people make when it comes to family law?
Bernie, thanks again to you and Wayne for having me on your Knack for Business podcast. It's a great exposure for myself and for our law firm. And as you understand from your mentioning, it's family law and wills and estates that focus on a common mistake people might make when it comes to family law, not realizing in the litigious matters going through court. There is an obligation in family law to disclose your income and asset fully and accurately on an ongoing basis. Your matter to go through court for a long time, there's going to be this continuing obligation to disclose. So your tax returns, notices of assessment, proof of your income through a year-to-date earnings statement. If you're a small business owner, there's likely having to provide a financial statement and other types of proof of income. So it's a common thing that can be something new to some people who want to do their court system.
Some people feel very afraid of making a will. It's like, if I make a will, then I'm going to die. But two questions. One, why is a will such an incredibly necessary function? And what is some bad things that can happen if you don't have one?
Wayne, why it's such a necessary function is because you want to make sure if you've got a lot of assets and perhaps a big family that, or your close friends, you want to make sure that you're providing all of your estate the way that you want to. You might have a business that you want to protect for your family. Perhaps you have children or loved ones with special needs and you want to keep assets available for them long after your passing. That's why it's so important. And with regards to your second question, that was the importance of a will. If you don't have a will, the intestacy rules come into play according to the Succession Law Reform Act, the rules on what will happen to your assets. That's what goes forward. And so you just lose the right to decide on how your assets are going to be distributed. So they will go to if you're married, your married spouse. And also if you're common law, it's not going to go to your common law spouse. Your assets going to go in after your married spouse, go to your children, then your parents. If you don't have children, you just lose that liberty to provide the assets the way you want to.
So from a business perspective, for If they delay, what are the risks? Does that also play a factor in how things could evolve or devolve in the case of not having a will?
If you're incorporated, there's other folks who would talk about specifics of corporation and tax consequences. If you're providing property to somebody, and if you have shares in a corporation or you're a controlling shareholder, then it should be, you really want to make sure that, like, if you want to keep the business, the corporation alive afterwards, it's important that you're indicating in your will what will happen or in the incorporating documents for the business. So it's always good to look at the formation documents or the articles of incorporation, because yes, if you're the controlling shareholder, it's going to be you who determines what will happen. If you have all the shares, for instance, when you have a business with a will, even if you're not a sole owner of a business, a significant portion, there can still be some of the assets of the business that are considered yours personally that will depend on a variety of factors. It's important to know because it could be that some of the assets that you have are assets that you can make decisions on, even if you're not in control. In terms of the importance of a business, things to take into consideration when you have a business and you take account for in your will, even if you're not the sole owner, you might be able to determine how some assets in the business can be distributed because they are considered your personal assets, depending on how much of the business you own. That's something important to keep in mind. Yeah, and it's also, it goes back to, again, with your business, that you want to make sure that you're really the one making decisions on what's going to happen with the business. Don't just not account for it. It's very important because your family, you want to make sure that the business is, that there's a decision being made on it, because it could be that if you don't account for it, it won't be accounted for the way you want with your family.
What is a power of attorney and how does it work?
Yes, I think that's when with a power of attorney applies during someone's life, and then a will is for what happens to assets and decision making for your children, or trying to have a guardian for your children after you pass away. Power of attorney is providing decision making authority to someone you decide with respect to your personal care and managing your property, or it could just be one of those two if you become no longer able to make those decisions. Power of attorney is the actual document where the person who's giving that decision-making authority, the grantor, indicates the decisions they want to be giving to somebody, and grants who will be that decision maker. The requirements in a power of attorney are not that extensive. It can be a written document. I just need to have two witnesses who have witnessed the grantor making this power of attorney in person. And of course, have the grantor signature, should have initials on each of the pages. So that's what a power of attorney is. It can also take effect for when the grantor is still able to make decisions with respect to property. If, for instance, he or she is sick for a certain period of time and doesn't want to be making those decisions, or is on vacation for a few weeks and needs somebody to be making decisions about property at home.
Does that also flow the same for business too? So if you're a business owner, not a large corporation, or, where you have 100 employees and where it's, has a lot of components to it, like you have a second in charge that can step in. But if you're a solopreneur, even you may have a partnership.
Yes.
Does power of attorney apply in that space, or is there a different tool to manage that?
We're managing a power, so we're making, if you have a solo business, that would be covered under a power of attorney for property. It would be important to specify in your power of attorney document what the property is.
I watch a lot of TV, and Law and Order is right up there. How does a person with a legal background work people through the emotions and the trauma of what's happening to them?
In any profession or service provider, you should have your own style and live with that. That goes for doing your job in different ways. If I was to provide my, how I think it should be done, I just think that everybody's different with lawyers, with how they're going to manage people's emotions in client's emotions in different scenarios. For myself, it's focusing on just not being too judgmental, trying to myself just stay as calm as possible and focused on the solutions that we're trying to work towards and the rights that need to be protected. What are the legal arguments? What are the facts in the scenario? If it's going to take a long time to get to that space where we can actually talk in that way and I can get instructions from my client, then I'll take that time to try to get to that level of calm.
One question, apocryphal, they talk about contesting wills and they weren't in the right mind or didn't have the capacity to do that. How do you judge capacity in a will?
Yes, there's a checklist that I'll have to go through, Wayne, but with anyone where the capacity might be in doubt with the client. So we'll make sure to see if they're speaking clearly, if they're understanding what I'm saying. If they're below the age of 18, then you're not able to provide your own will. That's the exception if you're married. Those are some of the things that I look at, but I make sure to have that in writing if capacity is in doubt.
Is there, when you have a situation where there's doubt of capacity, you rely on a third party like a physician to offer advice?
That would be a great way to go about that. What I refer to in thinking about that, Bernie, is with powers of attorney. If the grantor, you're trying to determine if they become incapable of making decisions with respect to their property or personal care, you can have different types of health professionals determine this. So, yes, that's what I would go about doing.
It almost seems like, and I've heard this in a boardroom, far better to set up the arrangements when everything is calm, when the waters are calm and quiet, than when you're in turbulent times, because usually then everybody's emotions are running hot. Yeah. So whether it's a will or powers of attorney, that should all be pre-established sooner than later.
Okay, definitely with powers of attorney, Bernie, if capacity is going to become an issue, if there's inklings about that becoming an issue soon, exactly, then with wills and powers of attorney. I think one question is, when is a good time to have a will or a power of attorney? And if that's coming into play, then it's a good idea.
So the process to set up a power of attorney or a will, especially if you're in business, right? What should a person do? You're not in a state of conflict. You're just preparing for a future state that might happen. When you might pass might not be well known. Eventually will happen. It happens to all of us, apparently, like taxes. But the power of attorney, no one ever thinks they're going to be totally out of commission due to medical reasons, for example.
Right.
What process should a person do if they say, I don't have one? I don't have these tools. I don't have these implements available to me right now. What are the next steps? What's the process?
So basically the next steps, Bernie, going towards having a power of attorney, if you think that it should be that time. I say for a power of attorney, you should go see a lawyer. With that lawyer, he or she will give you the information that you're looking for. They should. So, who should be the attorney, the different requirements for being an attorney, for you under a power of attorney, and just answering those general questions. When incapacity could come about, what constitutes that? I would think that anybody should do that'd be your best bet in order to go about doing the power of attorney. That's their decision. If maybe they have a lot of information already and you don't need to go to a lawyer to have a power of attorney completed, then maybe you've already gotten a lot of information and it's more just confirming the way you want to go about it.
Does that need to be vetted through a justice? Or if I establish a will, not necessarily understanding all the requirements for verbiage and the elements that are required. The same for power of attorney. How do you make sure that, okay, I've crafted a will. If you're not going to a lawyer's office, how do I make sure that stands as a true document? Or do you recommend you should go to a lawyer? It's going to save you a lot of headache and heartache.
Anybody can not go through a lawyer and have a will as long as the requirements for making the will valid are carried out, so that there are two witnesses, their signatures, the will drafter's signature. It's also a good idea to have an affidavit by each witness, confirming what they did as witnesses to the will. You initial each page of the will, so the witnesses and the testators, the person who drafted the will. So going to a lawyer is always the best idea for doing a will because of all of the legal aspects with a will, understanding the consequences of making a particular decision legally under a will, what will happen if somebody predeceases you, somebody who's a beneficiary in the will. But for a lot of assets, in order to actually have the estate distributed according to the will, is going to need to be probated. And that means you're going through court to have an order for grant of probate, saying that the will, in other words, that the will is valid according to a court. And so that's another reason to go to have a lawyer assist. But I'm trying to get to your question about can you do a will? Is there anything else apart from doing a will, even if you don't have a lawyer? But yeah, there will be other steps likely about having a granted probate order. So
It sounds like if you go to the lawyer, you'll save yourself a lot of that was unfortunate moments. Wayne, over to you, sir.
This you may not have an opinion on, but I'm really interested. 30 or 40 years ago, you had your family's lawyer, and you referred to him
Right.
as, this is my lawyer. It seems that lately, no one has a family lawyer anymore. One has if you're buying a piece of property, you get a lawyer. If you're getting a will, you get a lawyer. If you're being sued, you get a lawyer. If you want to sue someone, you get a lawyer. But the family lawyer seems to have disappeared in our culture. And I wondered why.
I'm happy to give my 2 cents on some of what you're asking there, Wayne. Just from what I've learned in the local bar, is just that for instance, in family law, there's a lot of procedure in court and a lot of different forms to fill out. And so, yeah, I don't think it was the same kind of level of that in the past. And so it was potentially more practical for lawyers to do family law, real estate law, wills and estates, corporate law, and even another area or two, all like to really be a generalist. And I know a lot of lawyers are generalists in their power to them. Maybe I'll branch out and do a few other areas later. But in family law, to be able to take any kind of case that comes around, I think it's definitely easier if that's all you do. So I really think it's the procedural technical requirements for family law. And I'm not exactly sure why, but there's just a lot of talk in the legal profession about there just being more specialization. So I'd like to find out more why too.
So here's a question regarding that surrounds business owner going through a divorce. Whether I'm running a solopreneurship or I'm running, I have partners or I'm part of a corporate structure with shareholders and so forth. What advice would you give a person to listen, I'm thinking of getting divorced? What impact does that have on the business?
Oh, yes. So if somebody, Bernie, I understand your question, is undergoing a divorce, the issue is that, to me, the issues that come up is that their assets and their income, it relates to what I was saying about disclosure. Like they really can't get away from disclosing all their assets and income if the other party pushes on that and goes through court, because it's one of the most central obligations in family law is to disclose all of your income and your assets. And if that doesn't happen, then there can be court hearings, separate motion hearings for disclosure. You can have come at a trial in the matter by various third-party witnesses who the party who is not disclosing everything, that in fact they are not disclosing everything. So I think for small business owners, it's important to know that you're going to have to in court disclose all your assets and income. And what that can mean. It might mean that if you're in a family business and you've got people who are therefore at arm's length from you in the business, that the salaries you provide, the management fees, the wages to those individuals may be considered part of your income. And this income will then be part of the determination of if there's child support or spousal support and to provide. So the higher your income, the higher the obligation is towards a child or children for child support, and potentially you would have to provide. Anyway, spousal support and child support are a whole other conversation.
If you're shopping for a lawyer,
Hmm.
what should be looking for? Do you take notes? How does one find a lawyer that fits them?
That's a great question. I think in this day and age, a lot of people will the online presence, of course, like Google reviews, and that's one thing that I think a lot of people will refer to. If I were looking for a lawyer in an area, I would always, and it's just my opinion, but I would always ask around, ask family, any lawyers you know. I would ask other lawyers in the field if you know anybody in your family, or friends, because they've worked with them or again opposing sides in a court matter, and really see what they have to say about that lawyer, just about them, about their personality and all. And in a family law matter, when you're working very closely with somebody on something kind of emotional, it's potentially very difficult at some points. I would want to, just also myself, just follow my gut when I go meet with that lawyer for the first time, and try to see the few other lawyers or not go investigate the whole place, but just it'd be small firms as well, like we have here, can also pride themselves a bit on that personal touch. So that's something that maybe people might be more drawn towards, but not of course, a lot of people prefer maybe the more established name. So I think it's up to you, but definitely the more emotional to potentially the case. And if it's family law, I'd follow your gut and really get to know your lawyer a little bit, like just have a meeting one-on-one. And otherwise I would still go try to talk to friends and family, and try to find other lawyers to get their opinions.
When a lot of times when people are young and you ask them what they want to be, astronaut and fireman are seemingly the big two answers. What
Yeah.
got you into law?
Yeah. I got into law just to make a difference in people's lives. There's a lot of opportunity. You also get to have a lot of different work tasks that you're carrying out. If you're kind of someone who likes to stay busy and you like doing research, you like writing, you like advising and consulting, really solving problems, that's what draws me to it, is that,
So if someone decides, okay, listen, I need to get my power of attorney and my will set up, how long and how much? How long does it take to get it set up, and how much does it cost? What should they expect as a ballpark? Assuming they're not a billionaire down in the States with 14 kids floating around, a whole bunch of ex-wives or ex-spouses, potential other liabilities, including, shareholders that might be going, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
But you're a simple human being with a simple life. Even if you have an ex-wife somewhere in the fray of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Bernie, I think the fees for simple wills that kind of non-complex will are about $500, power of attorney $250, and the more complex the assets are, and as you allude to, the bigger your family, I'd say just leave it that then it'll take more time, and so. Yeah, it can cost more for our services for doing a will or a power of attorney as well, and the length of time it can take. Really, we'll try to go with our clients' priorities. If they're really trying to have their will or their power of attorney done as soon as possible, maybe there is a real fear or concern about capacity being an issue soon, and you want to make sure that your client can make that power of attorney. Decide who will be their decision maker when they become no longer able to do that. Let me try to go more quickly. But with wills, it's very important. We really need to see a list of all the assets and debts that are potential client, the values of those debts and assets, any kind of other testamentary documents or documents that they have, such as a life insurance declaration, a pension plan, where there's already indications of what will happen to some of their assets. We need to see that, as any lawyer doing a will need to see, to make sure that you're advising your client about the implications of what they want to put in their will, that it's going to match or not match, and what the consequences are. Because ultimately, if there are going to be certain risky things that a client wants to have in their will, I want to make sure that I've advised them of all the options and the potential consequences, and put that in writing to them, as well as, if these are the assets, and that's that you've indicated.
So you mentioned you're bilingual, which is one of the big questions, and it's from Zoom. So that's the world. But
Yeah.
law has territories that specialize in. How big is your geography, and how big do you like it to be?
Oh, yes, Wayne.
How do we hold you?
You can find her, and anyone can find her information on our website, which is ottawalawfirm.com. We're also active on LinkedIn, Facebook, X. Our address is 1 Nicholas Street, so right beside the Rio Center. And we provide our services, legal services, anywhere in Eastern Ontario, essentially. But if there's a client, as you get to, Wayne, that might have a matter in another province, and yet some of it's taking place virtually, like that's come up recently, or you're able to assist somebody on a virtual conference in a family law matter. So if somebody's here in the Ottawa region, but they have a matter that's taking place elsewhere, we can also provide the services to them.
Are there any business collaborations that you're looking to work with as a legal firm, to reaching out? Are there businesses you work hand in hand well with?
Yeah, yes, Bernie, that I'm always looking into that. Odette, she founded the firm in 2003. She's senior lawyer, business person. So and the other members of the firm always seeking different opportunities. But, in real estate, for being able to be lawyers on real estate, residential purchases and residential transactions, we're always looking to real estate agents who can be the lawyers for those types of transactions. And any French clients, people who need services in French and family law, wills and estates, real estate, seeking to assist more people in French. And really people who are also, if they're more in need, and including financially, that those are always, it's gratifying, and there's a real access to justice is still always in my opinion, a reality. It costs a lot to go through court for a long time. Almost anyone, unless you say you're a billionaire in the States or anywhere. But yes.
I want to say, Redmond and Brian, I want to say thank you for being our guest today, to my co-host, Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. So if you're in the province of Ontario, or you have a matter that's coming up and you're residing here in Ontario, Redmond's firm will be more than glad to aid and assist you, whether it's a will, power of attorney, real estate matter. There's a whole cornucopia of things they can help you out with to keep things running smooth and straight. And kind of the rule of thumb is address the issues before they become active. So that's including the power of attorney and will.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, waynemotivateyou.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter U.ca, or his website, motivateyou.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Jovan Strika from Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space; then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.